We're going to, with the text code and with that link, you can pick which method you want to use, if you want it to be on your computer screen or if you want to go through your phone, and I'll pull that code up again. But we're going to be making a word cloud on the screen. So there'll be questions, and feel free to talk and discuss it. If you don't want to text any answers or type any answers, we have several people on the team who are just going to send out what we're hearing. So this is emphasis on the discussion portion of this, but this is that code again, or the link is still in the chat. If you text the code, the format will kind of look like this, where you'll get something. If you text 22333, you'll get a text saying that you've joined the session. And then after that, you can start responding to our questions on the screen, and it will appear in real time, if that all makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, please, now's the time to call out and just say what you're unclear about. So this first question, if you are either on the website or if you've already set up the text code, you can type in one-word answers to the response, what strengths do you see in your neighborhood or in the Garfield neighborhood? If you want it to be more than one word, spaces don't work, so use a period in between. And again, this is also for discussion, so you can text something, but also we just want to hear from people and really talk this out.
Again, and I'll reiterate too, since there are no residents on the call, that organizations involved, please feel free to kind of type in or talk about what you also see in East Toledo or Garfield specifically. For the person who put location, can you talk about why the location is good or why it's a strength? Or maybe what about the history as a strength?
Similarly, when you talk about parks, since there are several parks, it might be helpful if you could be more specific. Perhaps all the parks, surrounding parks. Is it just the Metro Park?
Also, feel free to talk. We can just text if you guys want to. That's perfectly fine. It seems like we're getting a lot of responses, but now is the time if you want to talk through anything. I'm really curious about what about the history and what about the location is a strength, if people answered those. Or anything.
This is Ryan. I'll kick off the conversation portion. As a non-resident, I really just am enthralled with Toledo's history in general, but the history of East Toledo is specifically fascinating to me. It's just so rich in industry for one, but it's also the east side of the river is where is it Daniel Navarre was like sort of first plotted Toledo. I just recently discovered on the what is known as the Presque Isle, which is like not quite an island where the Port Authority sits now. There's a historic landmark there that notes that that's where Mr. Navarre sort of first put down roots. So I just am really, I just think that East Toledo's got such a fascinating history and sense of pride around that. You know, I love going to Michael's Cafe and just going through the history collection there and how much, it's just such a unique thing that I don't think any other neighborhood really has that's documented and present and so aware in that way. It's just a really great part of Toledo. And I would invite people that actually live in East Toledo to riff on that and tell me more about it, because I'm fascinated and I want to hear your experiences.
I'd be interested, you know, folks have written down architecture. Are there any specific buildings that should be highlighted? Is it other than perhaps Wade High School or the Masonic building on Main Street? Are there specific buildings, the Weber building?
We've got.
What are some of the highlights when we talk about architecture?
Would be number one.
I think the Weber building's definitely one of them. I think the Masonic is. I find it fascinating that about 100 years ago, brick by brick, they moved all the buildings further on Main Street, further back to widen the roads. And that's just an astronomical task. I couldn't even imagine moving the Weber building, you know, to widen the street. People are very proud of the stadium. I think that's a huge pride point. The school.
Yeah. There's not much. Okay.
Is the stadium just used for football, or is there any other activities?
Mostly football, but it used to be used a lot for district city or city district games. Okay. I know most schools have their own facilities now, but it was very well known that if you were going to be in a playoff, it was going to be played at Wade High School's field. So I think that's part of the history.
I think the women's football league plays there. I'm not sure if they have in the recent years, but I know that they played there.
So it could be an opportunity for some future events of some kind.
Oh, yeah.
The one really nice thing is they, like White Stadium, they allow the East Toledo Junior Football League. So the grade schools get to play there. And I'm telling you, them kids get out there in that big field and they just think they're it. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
It is. I forgot it. Yeah, that's a good one, Bev. I'm trying to.
And it's really a place of gathering. Like when I think about our parades that we have, like in the school system, that's always the place it ends or the place it begins. When we had the COVID graduation, that was the place it began and ended as we had a parade for the kids. Like that's like definitely a gathering spot.
I think the other thing with the history, especially specific to Waite and the Alumni Association, you know, when TPS did their, I think, Building for Success program, Waite High School and the folks that support Waite High School really fought hard not to have Waite torn down. So that history of that building, you know, to make sure that the identity of that high school stayed with the community or in the community instead of, not that there's anything wrong with building a new building, but the idea was to renovate and keep that architecture in place because that's what people relate to and know Wade High School if you went there and graduated from there and, you know, spent all those years as a high school student. think the other thing about East Toledo in general, once you're an 05er or an East Toledoan, you can move away from East Toledo, but you can't take East Toledo out of those who move and go somewhere else. You know, for example, my son lives in LA. He loves East Toledo, and he's so glad that he grew up in East Toledo because it was a diverse, and it was a community that everybody was welcomed. You know, we're welcomed in East Toledo regardless of what your background is, or, you know, your your level of income, and, you know, we're just all the same. We're all hardworking, dedicated people, and we stand up for what we believe in. I think that's another thing that is really important for me, for East Toledo community, is that, you know, we stand up and we do what we would like to see happen in our communities. Hope I said that right. It felt like I was rambling.
Oh, that was perfect.
Well, Wade has a rich history.
It absolutely does.
There are these stories about how it was built backwards.
Yep.
Is that true?
I don't, you know, they say it is, but I don't know.
Teresa, she could let it know.
I think it looks cool that it's facing the east side.
Right.
If it's backwards, we like it.
Okay.
We'll take it.
Yeah, we'll take it.
Yeah.
Oh, first resident of East Toledo. Okay. You know, there are a couple of books on East Toledo as well that were written by Larry Michaels, and I think one was even co-written by Bob Clark, who is a big advocate for East Toledo and our neighborhoods and our schools too.
Okay. Just to keep things moving, this next part is, what challenges do you see in your neighborhood?
Well, I'm going with blight because, I mean, just some of the houses that need to be torn down that are still standing for God only knows why. And I know it's red tape. Teresa will know. She's got some. My Licking Street house I'm going to keep pushing for. I mean, it's a burned out house. It was a drug house. It's ridiculous that it has to sit there for 10 years. I mean, and it hasn't looked this bad in 10 years, but I mean, I just don't get it. I just don't understand why it takes our city so long to deal with these kind of problems when the guy he's over $15,000 behind in taxes. We live on the east side. Our taxes are not that high. So you do the math, it's a lot of years.
Ev, do you think, what do you think is the biggest problem? Is it the blight, the abandoned homes, or is just deferred maintenance scattered throughout the neighborhood?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, it's both. But I think if we could, I mean, I've talked to a couple people that the last couple of weeks, and their biggest thing is, why is code enforcement not doing their job? Why should we as citizens have to get on Engage Toledo and complain about everything? Why is this code enforcement person not, okay, I got it, it's COVID right now. You can drive around in a car. You can get out and walk. The fresh air is going to do you good. We just don't understand, what are we paying a code enforcement person for if they're not doing their job? And that's one of the biggest complaints in this neighborhood. And how do you go about, I mean, who do you talk to, and what do you, I mean, how do you go about getting that taken care
Mm-hmm.
Those are the,
it's also about managing the.
Those are the 50-year questions that are being asked.
I can give a little bit insight. We are doing we've all been pushing for that because that's a common in all of Toledo, and they are going through their code enforcement and seeing where all the problems are. So all your pushing and everything that we're doing is making a change.
Okay, well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
But I mean, seriously, that is one, like I've talked to a few people and they're like, if you're going to bring up anything at the meeting, just bring up, why is code enforcement not doing their job? That would eliminate a lot of the problems, because I have a lady that has moved up here from Lima, and she said in Lima, their code enforcement is on you. If you're not doing what you need to do, you're going to get a letter. And she's like, why is that not happening here? I'm like, I don't know that answer.
I think the other thing that's important to mention is there are residents and individuals who have lived in the neighborhood, you know, probably grew up here, bought their first home here, stayed because they love East Toledo, you know. And I know when the economy crashed in 2008, a lot of our homeowners who still choose to stay, you know, it's hard for them to afford to maintain their home. We need more low interest, or maybe grants. I know those, you know, those are hard to come by, but we need those sort of things to help those who choose to live in East Toledo, who choose to, you know, make this their forever home, I guess, if you want to call it. But I think it would go a long way if there were more programs and more, you know, if creating a wish list, more programs to help homeowners, especially if they can't quite afford it. You know, they just need that little hand up for a moment, to help them fix the steps, maybe a roof, you know. And I know there's programs out there for that stuff, but getting that information to our people is probably really important.
That's really great.
There's a reason that some of us choose to stay and live in East Toledo, and it's because we love our neighborhoods. We love where we came from, or where our families come from.
Right. Very true.
And it's hard, it's, you know, and the thing is, some days it's hard to say, and I mean, I'm just saying this from my perspective sometimes, and I would never ever say that I don't love East Toledo, but sometimes it's, well, why aren't you doing anything about that? Or why do you choose to stay? You know, some days I wonder, why do we, well, I go down East Broadway every day, one length of the East Broadway, thinking, gosh, it's changed. What could we do differently? I think that's the other thing. It gets good. It's good. And then it just, that impression is no one cares about East Toledo. And that's not true. Maybe that's a better way to put it, you know, because I love East Toledo, and I will go to my dying grave probably working hard for East Toledo, like many of you, but
Right.
some days it's really difficult, you know. And how do we change that mindset? And I think we've done a really good job, One Voice for East Toledo, and all the folks or stakeholders that have stepped up to help change the perception in East Toledo. But it does take all of us. I think that's the other thing to remember. It's just not one agency, one organization, or 5 people who come together to do a cleanup. It's about, you know, let's get everyone involved. I think we've done a really good job with that in most incidents. COVID hasn't helped us this year, but we will get back to, I think that's what's important about these meetings, that getting people back out on the street and cleaning neighborhoods up and letting people know that there's people working like this group and others to make a change in our communities or in our neighborhoods.
Yes.
I think that kind of goes into a lot of these points go into like kind of the next point of like,
Okay.
you know, what specific programs, what specific businesses or amenities, you know, can people benefit from? I know we've already mentioned home ownership programs, and there was another one that,
yep. Home improvement programs, or
Right.
small grants, you know, low interest home improvement loans. And I know those are available through banks, but I think the other thing is some of our folks can't go to the traditional banks. So how do we connect them to those programs that already exist?
Probably the most visible building in Garfield is the Weber building at Front and Main, 3 stories. The first floor has businesses. The second and third floor have been vacant for a long time.
Right.
They're some really historic spaces. What do folks think the second and third floor should be used for?
That's a good question.
Housing, for example. Business development, assuming there'd be an elevator put
Yeah, I
in.
was just going to say, I like that. I know we've put on here this big business incubator. Maybe that's what it is. That Weber building, it's housed a lot of different businesses over the years.
Yeah.
I mean, Michael is a Staples, and then some of the other businesses, but Michael's is a Staples there, you know, and it's really drives the people to that building.
Right.
And maybe it's that business incubator, or, you know, small businesses. Maybe it's a first time entrepreneurs using the space, utilizing that space. Like a startup company.
It actually existed at one time. There was a second floor, was a kind of a low-tech business office incubator.
Oh, okay.
I think it worked for quite a while, but you know, I think it was managed by River East.
Oh, you're right. That's right, Marty. Yeah. I think that's the other thing. I mean, it's not to, you know, we have NeighborWorks, which is a great organization. I think the other thing that we really need to, we need that small, I guess it would be a, you know, like a development organization. I know that NeighborWorks, they do a lot on the housing piece, but what about that development, helping those, you know, entrepreneurs start a business? I mean, that's something. Plus our whole Main Street. I mean, we have some other buildings, that the Weber building, I know we just talked about the, now I'm drawing a blank on it. The one at the corner of,
the code building?
What
Masonic?
is it? Masonic.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about that one all the time. That one should, I mean, I don't want to take away from the historical piece, but that one really should be torn down. But that's just my opinion. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, you mentioned NeighborWorks, and I remember reading on their site that they were doing some home improvement, like they were offering like weathering services, weren't they? And like on a couple streets in Garfield, like did that happen, or like did they get pushed back because of COVID?
I think it got pushed back because of the COVID. I think so, because they were working with, well, that's their program. The weatherization program is one of their main programs, and they do a really good job. And when we get that service, it's a really good program. But I think that it did get put on the back burner. And I know Lathrop was working with them on a project to celebrate their 125th. And I know that got put back on the back burner for a minute because of COVID.
Hey, Jody, is NeighborWorks somewhere where people could go to get like information about getting loans? Because I mean, for people that want to buy homes in East Toledo?
Absolutely. They have a homeownership programs, and they also have the Financial Opportunity Center where the coaches are housed there now. So that would be a good place to get people to go, especially if their finances aren't perfect. And we refer people there all the time for that program. So yeah, they could start there.
Okay.
And I know they do home ownership. I think they do 101 classes, that type of introduction piece.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You can also provide second mortgages, which can be important.
Right.
Yes.
Yep. Well, and I think the other thing is helping individuals who choose to live here. Maybe they're running. Maybe they're running, and maybe preparing them to own a home sometime in the future.
There's a question on chat whether the second and third floors of the Weber building are habitable. I don't have a definitive answer, but I think it'd be fair to say the adaptive reuse would require some work.
Right.
Yeah, and Ryan responded, but there is no elevator for handicap access, so it's something that would need to be built into the project, which I think has become a hurdle actually for that building recently.
When will the surveys be completed for Garfield so we can figure out if there are some homes here that people could invest in, you know what I mean, to buy and fix up? Because walking around passing out those flyers, I realized there's quite a few more houses that need some TLC than I thought.
Sure. So it's in the land bank's hand now, Bev. So
Oh, okay.
Liz and Molly went out and surveyed everything, and then they have to kind of like form that data, and then it should be by the end of the year, though. So we should have
okay.
that back by
Still this year? Okay.
Hoping so. I don't want to hold land bank accountable, but I'm pretty sure,
Okay,
yes.
but we're not talking like 9 months or something.
No,
Okay.
no. It should
Okay.
be very soon, yes.
Okay. Well, that'll be helpful. So we
That
can,
will be.
that'll be kind of the next step of trying to figure out, which ones can we get? And I mean, are there people willing to fix, banks willing to fix them up, or somebody fix them up so that they can put them up for sale, or to sell them to people as long as they know that they've got to put 10, 15,000 into it, or what our next approach is. Because I think that's the biggest thing here. I mean, I've had a few neighbors that tell me they want to just take carbon over there, the street carbon. That's the little one that Nicole was on last week, and just pick their house up and put it over on that street, because that street is so nice. It's like all the neighbors are, because they're mostly homeowners, and they just take pride in it. And you can tell it's a big difference.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Just to like stay on time, we're moving to the next question, but I do notice in the chat questions about is it Abid kitchen or
Ebide.
Abide?
Right center.
Having a good model for classes. But this next question is about just anchors in the neighborhood, and where would you show people around in East Toledo?
Wait, yeah. Well, I'm going to be biased and say the East Toledo Family Center.
You go, girl.
Right?
Nothing wrong with that.
No.
Good job, Jody.
You've earned that bias, Jody.
Thank you. I think our schools in general, because they are new, even though there's new buildings, all of our schools have such long history. Mm-hmm. I mean, you've got Birmingham and Oakdale and East Broadway. I mean, every school just has a history of its own. And because East Toledo is so, I don't want to say divided, but we are defined by the school that you went to. So Garfield and Oakdale, when kids play football, it's for their school. So I think touring any one of our neighborhoods or any of the neighborhoods or schools is important to show that history. Because if you grew up in the, Garfield neighborhood, or, you took a lot of pride in you, especially on football game days, it was some good rivals between Oakdale and Garfield and the other schools. So
Garfield and Raymer.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. I remember those. I don't really remember who our rival was. We weren't good in those days.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Tony Pacos is a good one.
Yeah.
Frankie's is good. They have to think about too, they have created the new it's I don't know if you would tour it, but the dialysis, the DaVita, that's new to East Toledo. That was just built over the last 2 years. Not that I would tour it, but at least it's someone, took a chance and put their business in East Toledo.
And the museum.
Is DAVITA.
And then we also have the museum down here on the waterfront.
Oh, yes. Yep. Yeah, the Great Lakes Museum.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, our docks. I mean, the docks, restaurants, all of them are doing pretty well.
Right. And the awesome Metro Park that's coming.
That's right.
You guys
Thank Metro Parks, Matt and Alan and whoever else is on.
Exactly.
I think we can all agree, not Alan.
Absolutely. You
Uh,
guys can have that one forever.
Neither one of you mentioned the river itself. Is that part of growing up then this part of the East Side, or has sort of that industrial legacy made that not really part of people's lives? It was mentioned last meeting. I was just curious if this was an integral part of your, growing up, or considered something, a point of pride.
The water is just so that it's not really attractive. But I mean, there are people that used to go fishing down there. I can't believe they actually ate the fish out of there. But
Sure.
But no, it's never really been a place that you'd say, "Oh, hey, I want to walk down to the water."
Okay.
No.
I think for my generation it was.
Was it?
Yeah, once the stadium, that was definitely a place to hang out, to get away. I know, like, and it's boat season. My dad is a freighter nerd, and him and his buddies always go down and watch the boats. I know lots of people that go down to watch the ships come in and out.
Okay.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Different generations.
I'm curious, with the new Metro Park nearing completion of its first phase, is there anything that needs to be done so the folks in Garfield will patronize the park, will feel it's their park, realizing it's a regional park, but is there anything that needs to be done program-wise or walkway-wise that the folks in Garfield will feel it's a park they'll be using on a regular basis?
What's your marketing plan, Matt?
Yeah, it's like
Some of it is the beneficiary of good design, not dissimilar to why we're on the call today. So there's a much more eloquent person on our team here with us, Alan, but some of it is just removing barriers from old fencing to concrete spaces, and that admittedly is the easiest part in terms of removal of boundaries. The next steps are populating it with people who have the skill set to program activities that they've heard will work, and also continually looking at what we need to offer to make sure that we're reaching people that live across the street. And that will be an examination that we will be undertaking for that park's existence. So part of the reason that I'm on this and was on last was I really wanted to know what kind of things should we have. Mr. Jarrett, I don't have a real solution for that immediately, other than continually asking and keeping the park open and dedicating the same people to that space, so we develop trust and consistency like we would in any other location, frankly, and not jamming necessarily ecological information or BEV, like forcing people into the water.
right.
It's a slow road, right? Yeah, for sure. So Alan, I don't know if you want to touch on that.
No, I mean, you did a great job covering that. The only other thing I would add would just be to, think about those physical connections into the park, just trying to find all the key access points along front to access the point from the adjacent neighborhoods. And so interested in potential, traffic calming studies along front, just to facilitate more, physical connection into the park itself, just to make sure everyone feels like, they can access the park, safely, especially if we're talking about kids.
Yeah.
Sounds like something we need to address as part of this plan.
Yeah, like a walkway.
Yeah, just threw a comment in the chat, but I'm curious as folks are thinking, thinking about being a new neighbor, and I know Marty's probably with me, even from the Old West End. Andres Hardware is, a local gym.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a good one.
Yes, that's a really good one.
That is.
If you're just buying a house in the neighborhood, that is a thing you need to know about.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious, looking at like Paco's, Michael's, Frankie's, what other local businesses, and I'm going to out myself, two of my favorite bars did not survive, Paris on the River and the Irish Buffalo, places that I like to go to just sort of hide out and grab a cheap beer. But, what are those other places in the neighborhood that are local neighborhood places where folks get together and or shop or just, you know, grab a thing. I mean, I know there's a couple different taco trucks. I'm just kind of thinking about, like, you know, stuff that you maybe take for granted as just sort of driving past or participating in each day that really are kind of special and unique to the neighborhood.
Homeboys is very popular because people feel very safe there.
What is? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Homeboys.
Oh, sure, sure.
And then next to it is a weightlifting place, and that's really popular.
Where do folks do their grocery shopping in Garfield? Is it the food town on Main Street? Is it a food town on Main Street?
It's the
Toledo Mart.
Toledo Market, yeah.
I personally only go there if I just need something quick. It's actually a lot cleaner and nicer. I mean, they've done a really good job with that store. But for the most part, I usually just go to Kroger or Myers out in Oregon, honestly.
Okay. So it used to be Food Town originally.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's owned by a family in Oregon, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. I used to know who the owner was.
It's a nice store. It really is a nice store.
They do. They take good care of it.
They do. It's
and
clean.
it is a good, And I know that neighborhood, it's walkable. People can get there from all sides of the neighborhood. I don't think they price gouge. I think it's a good, if you're going to shop there, if you need to shop there, you're going to shop there.
Right.
We have the pharmacy, the new pharmacy on Main Street as well, which is a family-owned business, and they took a chance to come to East Toledo and expand their services. I think it's the Toledo Family Pharmacy. And my parents swear by that pharmacy.
Oh, that's a big deal.
That is a big deal. That was a big deal, and of course they moved the post office from Second and put it in the little strip mall or strip area there near the food mart. So they did keep the post office in East Toledo. I think they considered moving it, at one point.
That was a good decision.
Yeah, it was, absolutely.
I think the bad part is, Jody, a lot of times people don't know about that. Like when it moved, they just think, oh, it got abandoned, and it's, where did it, it's gone. Because I know a lot of people that drive to Oregon because they're like, we don't have a post office here. I'm like, well, yeah, we do.
Huh. See, maybe we have to focus on how do we highlight, maybe that's one of our videos, Ruth, maybe that's one of the videos to talk about some of those companies that are still here.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's what we highlight, kind of tell their story.
Yep, I think that's a really good idea.
Right.
Then there's the shop, which is a barber shop, and that's right outside of the Garfield area. I mean, because like Undersh's is outside of Garfield. I mean, there's popular places within. I just don't. And the taco truck it always parks outside of the Garfield area too. So that place is hopping, but it's not in the Garfield area.
Right. I think the other thing that we really have to look at too is how the neighborhood has changed over the years, because there used to be a lot of Pringles store there?
Yeah.
That was just torn down.
Our own little community, that was an awesome store.
Right. But it was torn down because it was dilapidated and not taken care of. So I think a lot of smaller mom and pop businesses don't exist. You have to think about just in Garfield in that business strip. There's a lot of things, because I remember hearing stories from some of the older ladies who would help us with One Voice and stuff. Oh, you used to get your cash your check at the bank on the corner of 4th, go to the bar, eat dinner, the Arlington. You'd spend your entire weekend along that district. So, and a lot of older, and no offense to older people, but older people want to see that again. And I don't think it would exist, but they miss those sort of things, that family. You could have dinner with your family and go to the bar 2 hours later, Oh,
that's a true East Sider.
And you're a true East Sider.
I'm a true East Sider.
We've all been to the Paris. We've all
Yeah.
been to the Irish Buffalo. We've all been to those places.
Yeah.
I hope we get away from my family. So,
Telling my ratting myself out here a little bit.
I think that's a great point, Jody. Just to elevate, I think what you're talking about is, you know, the East Toledo really is, you know, even outside of Main Street. I'm just thinking about
Right.
the River East and, you know, the taco truck. I mean, it really is really walkable.
Mhm. Right.
Even now, you know, the density is there. I think that's one of the things I really love about it, as opposed to so many other neighborhoods. It really it's an easy space to move through because there is a lot of density, and there's a lot of closeness, and there's, you know, a lot of just like businesses, even if it's, you know, the carry out or, you know, the gas station or the bar or whatever. There's a lot of just kind of constant things that keep you connected. And I know we're sort of talking a little bit outside of the Garfield district, but I think that's a really good point to hit on, is how centrally located that is to so many other really wonderful
Right.
that's across the general community.
Yep. Yeah, because I even walk clear over to Deb's Ice Cream, which is a favorite on the east side. It's over right across from Navarre Park. So, I mean, it's a little walk from here, but it's nice. And you feel safe. You don't, I mean, I've lived on the east side for almost my whole life. And I mean, I totally feel safe. It's like one of the neighborhoods, like people always laugh that I work with. They'll come over here and they'll be like, geez, you guys, it doesn't matter if it's 20 below zero. There's always somebody out walking around somewhere. But you go to other neighborhoods and there's nobody out. Nobody sits on their porches. Nobody, you know, like talks to each other. But you come over here and it's a whole different atmosphere.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's it's great. There's always foot traffic. I think that's a huge asset. You know, you don't have to build that; it's already there.
Yep. Yeah, we don't have to build that.
So having more thriving businesses that meet the needs of Garfield residents, we take advantage of the walkability. That can be a real shot in the arm.
Mm. Yep.
Walkability is good if there's things to walk to.
Right.
And reasons to walk. And
Right.
certainly the
And
Metro
also-
Park will add to that, but having something on Main Street would also add to it.
And also fixing up the sidewalks that people walk on
Right.
point.
Right.
so they're more accessible.
Yep.
I think the other thing is, you know, we talk about this all the time when we've talked about in surveys that we've done. Do you feel safe? You know, most people feel safe in their neighborhoods.
Yep.
You know, we because we love our neighborhoods.
Yep.
But I can also say we've walked every street in East Toledo, so we have a sense of what our neighborhoods look like. I mean, we did the land bank surveys and we've done, you know, walking throughout East Toledo, but I think people just want to know that they're safe in their neighborhood, you know, that you can walk anywhere in East Toledo. I just told my husband the other day, I'm not afraid. I'm going. No one's going to stop me, but that's different for me. We want everyone else to feel safe and understand where they live and how they, connect to their neighborhood.
You know, passing out flyers, and we might have observed this at our last session, a lot of the homes have chain link fences and signs, beware of dog. It's kind of a suggestion that there's some concern about safety.
I think it's more because people, I mean, I'm not just saying the east side, but I know a lot of people in our neighborhood, they either have a pit bull or they have a Rottweiler. And pretty much if you have that type of a dog, because I've had Rottweilers, insurance wise, you have to have those signs on your fences.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an insurance thing. I mean, plus, I mean, it's a safety thing for them too, because you just don't, if you have a dog, I don't care if it's a little ankle biter, sometimes those dogs can be meaner than a big
They're
Rottweiler.
worse than the big dogs.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
We deliver meals, and those little ones are the ones I'm afraid of.
We call them ankle biters.
That's the technical term.
Yeah, that's a technical term.
Right. Well,
So
I
in
guess
terms of a future vision, what kinds of businesses would you like to see on Main Street?
I've always envisioned small, antique shops or um, affordable businesses for our for families and the low to moderate income, where they will shop, not just a flea market. And I don't want anybody to take that the wrong way, but there's specialty shops out there that I think could thrive on Main Street, especially with all of these, the Metro Park and the docks being built up. I think those mom and pop businesses, we need to get those back into the neighborhoods as well.
I think it'd be cool to see like a kayak or a bike shop,
Oh, that's
something
a good
right
idea.
there, since we have the river right there.
That's a good idea.
Yes.
Even that, I know we mentioned another screen, maybe the coffee shop or we've always talked about, we wanted to always have a building on Front Street and it can become a common or community space where people could just come together and talk about neighborhood stuff or have a coffee, sign on to their, their computer. Maybe just a, common area that people can come together.
I think one piece for Main Street that we're starting to think about, through these conversations with the core planning team is really that Marina Lofts is bringing new income into the neighborhood, and what are the types of things that they might utilize on a Main Street or partially on Front Street, and still obviously taking into account everything that Garfield and East Toledo wants to see for itself, but there is some new money there that can help, hopefully help these neighborhood businesses.
We've
and
talked
new
about
businesses.
doing a survey of the residents in the Marina Lofts, get their ideas.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Do folks see any potential for second floor residential along Main Street?
You're always asking about your housing, Marty.
Yeah.
It's almost like you have a background in it or something.
Yeah.
There are
maybe
quite
the
a
Snicker
few.
Show building.
There are
Where that
quite a few.
laundromat is. Second floor is wide open.
Right.
That might be a good candidate.
I do want to preface, we're about 10 minutes over. Obviously, feel free to continue. I'm not going to stop a conversation if we're having fruitful conversation. But this was the last question of the survey, right, Molly? And then we go back into, okay, cool.
Yeah. There's some questions in the chat. If some people have answers, I don't really have.
Average rent at the lofts, I think it's pretty high, right? I think the units are going for like $1,100 or $1,200.
Yeah.
I think 900 to 1,200.
That's what I thought. Yeah. That's what I've heard too. 900 to 1,200.
Oh,
And then
do we know
the
how
average house rent is about $725 to $750 here.
Okay. Are the lofts filling up? Do we know?
I think they are. I think they're at 80% capacity.
Yeah. It might be a little higher now.
Yeah.
And I've met two people from the lofts that were East Toledo. They were born and raised in East Toledo, moved away, and then are now renting, excited to live back on the east side on the lofts.
Wow.
So it's definitely pulling people back into the neighborhoods.
That might be a good candidate for Ruth to interview.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, Bev, who just said that? Was it Teresa or Bev talking about something?
It was me. I've met two people, I don't have their names, but just through talking, that have moved back to the marina, born and raised in East Toledo, moved across the river, and when the lofts they came back and rented, and they're very excited to be back on this side of the river.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to get in contact.
Yeah, why don't you close it out, Molly?
Yeah,
We can
sorry.
get those in. No, you're good.
I'm spacing out a bit myself. Not. It's weird, like presenting from home. This is just kind of a reminder of just all the different ways that you can stay in the loop, or you can share what's going on to your respective, with your respective platforms. Instagram, Facebook, where every time these meetings are recorded, and so we upload them to YouTube, and we split up kind of the informational section and the discussion session. So when folks miss sessions and they want to know what happened, they have access to it. And also, like these discussion questions, we have a Google form survey for people to fill out kind of on their own, and that can be found through the resources page on the website. And this is, we had a poll, and that's more for residents. I don't know that there are questions on here that would fit, unless, I don't know, I can send it out and you guys can look at it, and if there's a poll from Zoom, and if you have like any extra ideas on what's listed about service opportunities, or if you have any connections to any, we're still trying to plug into Waite High School. And the last question, or the second to last question is, trying to see how we can maybe form a more Garfield specific organization to stay involved in this planning process. And that's kind of all we have for you.
Any thoughts on how we can get more residents for our next session?
It's tough. The whole COVID thing right now is not helping. And there's a lot of people, honestly, that live in this neighborhood that don't have computers, or they don't have the technology to like get on and do this. Because I know that like August of 2019, we had a meeting here in the area, and we had a lot of people that came. I mean, if we could get through the stinking COVID and have some place that we could have this, I think we would honestly get a lot of people. I really do. I mean, these people want to be face to face. They don't want to get on a computer and talk. I mean, they just don't. There's a lot of people that aren't technical savvy, including myself. But I really do. I think, I mean, we had a lot of people that day. I want to say at least 40, maybe 50 people that day.
Yeah.
I mean, this is great. This presentation is great. I just don't, I mean, I've talked to people, and I just don't, I can't get them to,
Yep.
I just don't know why. They just.
No, and even as, even as somebody who does, know how to use Zoom and stuff, it's exhausting. Like, I imagine if you're helping your kids like do online school or other things, like you're probably sick of it. Like,
I think that's it. Yeah.
Well, we've gotten a lot of good feedback today, despite the lack of a lot of Garfield representation. But more Garfield folks, the better.
I think the other piece that we're thinking through, especially after the last meeting when we only had a couple people from the residents, is like expanding not the boundary of the plan, but the boundary of just like who we're targeting for the plan. One thing that was brought up a lot specifically today was not only Garfield specifically, but the East Toledo in general. And I think there is such a strong community. And so, we should try to reach out in general to everyone we can in East Toledo, because I think word of mouth goes a really long way in East Toledo. So I think that's one thing that we're going to be exploring and talking about further.
Well, and I know we've talked about specific groups. Do we want to, because we could invite the specific groups to some of these meetings, but do we want to schedule other meetings? Especially, we have a group of stakeholders that we work with you know, that group would be a good one to target. And of course, there's others that we could target as well.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jody. I think that'll be a next step.
Okay.
And I would say going forward, if you have contacts now, you can just kind of always refer them to these general meetings, because that was the point of these 4 sessions, that this is like an introduction in a quick way and to get some feedback, and then we can start focusing in on more specific, like what do the businesses need and what do the residents want, and all of those very specific, kind of nailing down those pieces.
When you say stakeholders, Jody, who are you talking about?
These are, we have one group in particular, they were all, well, and they worked with one voice, and Bev will know most of these folks, where we identified neighborhood leaders from every neighborhood, or if someone had an interest in a particular neighborhood. They were very instrumental in the Navarre Park piece, with the refinery and Mercy, and that we all met at one point, obviously before COVID, in person. So that would be a group, and there's like 15 to 20 people on that group. And Bev would know most of those, the Mary Wilsons, those individuals who, you know, we kind of target as if we need something done in a neighborhood, those are the people we reach out to.
Who are the leaders? Who are those people in the Garfield neighborhood?
Bev is one of them. I had identified a few more people in the Garfield neighborhood. Pat Jones is another one. She's an individual. I'm can't think of off the top of my head. I have a list that we could identify. And maybe that's a special meeting from us to them to be part of this conversation. I know we've talked about that.
Or perhaps invite them to the next meeting.
Yeah, can you get that list to Elizabeth, and we can reach out and make a special invite? And I guess the question I have for Bev is that I think you made I think it was you that made the comment, Bev, that you've talked to people and they said, well, if you go to the meeting, bring this up. Well, why aren't they going to the meeting?
You're muted, Bev.
You're muted.
Okay. Am I muted still?
No.
You're good.
You're good.
Okay. Some of them work second shift, and some of them just don't have computers, or they're just got things going on in their lives. So they're just like, here, you do it. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so tired of doing it. You guys got to come on. You know, it's like, I think they're getting tired of hearing me say the same things over and over. So I'm hoping on the next one, I've got a couple that are working second shift that they're going to try to come to the day workshop.
That'd be good, because if this plan is going to be successful, it's got to come from the bottom up.
Oh, absolutely.
And if, you know, I think we're really struggling. I know we're pulling our hair out, and this is, you know, Elizabeth and Liz and Molly have done a whole heck of a lot of work on this.
Right.
And it just seems like we're pulling our hair out trying to get the actual neighborhood involved.
Yeah. But like I said, I think we have to get in person to do this with a lot of them. Yeah. We really do.
Well, if that's going to be a successful plan, and if we can't get neighborhood involvement through a virtual means, you know, do we back up and punt, or what do we do? I mean, we don't want to push this plan from the top down.
I mean, I think, Mike, to your point, we are making, Liz has been working on making like a tutorial of like different touch points of like, you know, if you have an hour, you can come to this meeting. If you have 15 minutes, you can fill out this survey. Right. If you want to have a phone conversation, here's Bev's phone number so we can talk about. So I think it's just providing all of that information. And we haven't had anybody really call in to these meetings yet, but this is still an option. And I would just push that, Bev, to you and Jody of if people can't make it through a computer, they can still call in and we can kind of talk through the whole process with them. So
Yeah, because we've canvassed the neighborhood with what, 600 flyers or whatever.
Right.
We've sent out postcards to every property owner, and we're getting deer in the headlight here. I mean,
Yep.
Can I make a suggestion in that regard? And, I think with the 2 meetings coming up, I think we're all sort of on course to try to get as many folks as we have contacts with to attend those as possible. But Teresa and I chatted briefly last week, kind of on a similar note to this, but I wonder if we can get sort of a master list of all of our contacts, and then sort of, figure out who's contacting who so we're not inundating people. But maybe just each of us, split and take 5 or 10 folks that we know and would feel comfortable, who are residents of Garfield or nearby East Toledo area, and just go through and, get some one-on-one information to at least funnel back. Yeah. I mean, if we have the contact documented and what their feedback is, if we walk through the slides, because I know just personally, I mean, a handful of the folks who are, friends or other acquaintances that I could definitely get to spend 30 minutes or maybe an hour on the phone with me talking through this stuff, but probably are less likely to attend a Zoom meeting. Probably wouldn't come in person, but less likely to come in Zoom. So I'm just thinking if we sort of pool our resources that way, we probably can, moving in through January, really get some good feedback that I think would be ground up, and then, have those contacts ready for the day that we allegedly and hopefully can meet together again, to reach back out to those folks and say, hey, come see how your input is represented, and then sort of move to a validation of that and kind of riff on that previous input.
Yeah.
But, I don't want to usurp the process here, but I think we have to contingency plan a little bit, especially moving into winter.
Yeah, I think I kind of like that idea. Instead of Mohammed coming to the mountain, maybe the mountain's got to go to Mohammed. That, we just got to maybe reaching out like you're suggesting, Ryan, that maybe that's worth a try.
I mean, I think we have to be realistic that we're, it's working class, and they're working a lot, and they're juggling family and COVID, and, we've got some challenges to get their voices to the table.
Yeah, I guess, and I understand that, and I appreciate it. And, the flip side of that is that hopefully this plan is going to make things better and raise everybody's boat. And so there's that side of the equation too. And I don't know how we bring those 2 pieces together. And I understand they're busy and everything. Maybe we go to them like Ryan is suggesting. Maybe that's the best way. And if we can get a 15-minute conversation with them, maybe that's the information that we really need.
Well, and I'll personally invite the group the leaders to the next meeting. So I will personally send that one. I'm going to be honest, and we're for the next 2 weeks, our schedule at the center, we're really busy with Christmas and trying to gear up, but I will personally invite those folks to the next meeting, and the rest of those Garfield people that I have contacts for.
Oh, that's great, Jody.
That'd be great.
So I will
That'd
make
be great.
sure that we do that.
Great.
And I'll be on those meetings too. I have them on my calendar because I think the next one is both of the next 2 meetings are day meetings, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
I think at noon.
Their days.
Noon, right? On both days. And I think the other thing is the Todd Deans and the principals of the schools are probably an important piece. We could invite them to that meeting as well. I know they're virtual, so they might have a little more time.
Jody,
that'd be great.
Just on that note, Jody, would it make sense to maybe set up a couple of meetings that would be themed out? So one for, that was just specifically school administrators. So it was a little bit smaller group and more focused. And then, you know, maybe one for just business owners or.
Sure.
Do you feel like I'm just thinking sort of from a thematic and connectivity networking, from my own experience, I would be probably more inclined to accept an invite that was specific to my sort of area of interest than just a general invite. Is that a way maybe to sort of get a little bit more engaged interest?
Yeah, more by the businesses, maybe other organizations.
I think that was the plan for the next step, Brian, to your point, was that we were going to try to meet specifically with those other people. But again, I don't want to like squat, like if you guys want to start doing that and setting up those meetings now, feel free. You know, like obviously we have things set up, but it's not necessarily like kind of throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks at this point. So I would say there's momentum and willingness to do that now. Please, please do so. And I understand Jody from the point of, I know, because that was a point that Alan made early on was, you know, having these meetings during the winter is going to be tough with the holidays, but you know, it's kind of the nature of the beast. And
oh yeah, absolutely. And I don't disagree. It's just from my perspective, you know, we've got so much going on, and who knew even under COVID we would be this busy and crazy, but not making excuses. But there are groups of people that we can invite to those meetings to make sure.
Yeah, this is fantastic. I don't want to cut it. Well, I do want to cut us off. It's to 7:30.
That's a good idea.
I thank you all for coming again. I saw a couple people pop off beforehand, but again, I just want to thank you all. Everybody from the core planning team will be meeting again next week, but everybody have a safe and fun Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yep, Thanksgiving.
Take care.
Good job.
Thanks to Molly and Liz for all the work they did for this.